Alright, I'm gonna continue this. We left off with lands, and I'm gonna continue with gunlands. And guild, I think, sucks. I don't know, I think this is common knowledge, but gunland sucks in this game. It doesn't do damage. Like, its damage sucks. It's like hunting horn bad, except it can't buff people. The thing is, like, supposedly you make up for it with, like, shelling, so we can keep up damage on bad hit zones, and you have a block and everything, but getting the shield in front of you is so fucking difficult with it. You just don't counter, like, you don't have that many good counter abilities, and the mobility also sucks, and instead of buffing teammates, you just throw them around with your shells, and it's very annoying. It's very disruptive. It doesn't have any qualities to it whatsoever. And in G rank in particular, the shell damage sucks so bad it's pretty much never worth using. And the only reason to use shelling ever is to reset combos on other styles I'm gonna mention, but on guild it just doesn't have anything. The damage is low, the utility is low, the multiplayer capability is really bad, and all the supposed benefits don't matter. So it's a bad weapon. It's not striker hunting horn bad, but it's like really bad. It's that's just all I have to say about it. It really sucks. Um, striker is only a fair bit better because it has a hunter art and it can do more damage with poking. The main disadvantage with this is it can't full burst unless you're using the rocket boost jump. What's it called? The you know what I mean. Like the thing that's so good in Rise, and I kind of wish it would behave more like in Rise because, well, same problems as with Guild. It doesn't have enough. It doesn't really have much utility or anything. I might actually be putting it a bit lower, but it's because I think these are better. But still, it's noteworthy that it is better at poking than Gunlands, than Guild Gunlands, because yeah, you have an extra hunter art, so we can put evade arts on it, and the blast dash, which is kind of nice, kind of useful, and so you have a bit more mobility, but other than that, not very good. Adept, I'm gonna put this a bit higher. Higher than that. Probably not, but I like it more than Valor Lands. The reason why it's better is because the counter has a very high motion value, but other than that, it doesn't have anything noteworthy, so I can't put it any higher. It's just literally the counter has good damage, and that's all there is to it. I think otherwise it just sucks as bad as the other ones, so not very great. Aerial, I don't know. This is probably one of the worst styles in the entire game. Aerial is already not great. Gunlands is already pretty shit, and the main benefit you get from it is a vault where you can shell once in the air, or you drop down, do the down slam and full burst, which doesn't matter because in G rank the shell damage is so fucking terrible it doesn't matter ever. And aside from that, you don't really get anything that the other ones can do better. So it's not worth considering, in my opinion. It doesn't really have anything. You just give up things for nothing really useful. Alchemy, same reason. You just, I don't know. I guess you could poke. Maybe gonna put it a bit higher, but like, I don't really think it's that great. The reduced Violent Fire cooldown is kind of forgiving, but on the other hand, you can just bring Dragon's Breath, so you could just use that instead, and the lower Violent Fire damage kind of hurts it. Even if you can use it more often, it's just not an attack you would be using often. And when you're supposed to use it, you want it to do more damage. So it's kind of a detriment to it more than a benefit. And other than that, it just doesn't really do much. Like, I don't think it's very useful. Valor, on the other hand, I would actually put it here. I think in speedrunning, there's no contesting Adept is better, but I think for overall utility, this one is more consistent because you're not dependent on the counters to do damage. And the great thing about Valor is that not only do you get an infinite combo, which is very nice for poking, you also can shell out way better and way faster than the other styles. So it's good for poking because you can fill it up very quickly. It's also good for poking because the guard point reload is very useful, and you can follow it up with a slam, which does some damage. It's not better than the adept counter, but it's a thing that it has, which is very useful. And even if you want to shell specifically, it is very good for that. Like even in G rank, the shellings actually keep up somewhat with other Blade Master weapons. It's still lower tier, but consider this. From long shelling, I think it goes from high rank 32 to 36 damage in G rank from 4 to 5. So if you get a level 5 gun lance with long shelling, and you can keep up with other styles somewhat in G rank, then imagine what the 32 shelling is gonna do in high rank. Like, I think this is one of the absolute best styles to progress in the village, or in hub if you're going solo, or if you're still high rank in general, because you can just rush gun lances with high shelling, say the Zerigios one, which has good sharpness, decent raw, good affinity, and good shelling. So you can just use that and do incredible damage early on. The only issue is really it falls off later in G rank, but the reason I'm putting it so high is specifically because I think it's very consistent, very versatile, and it is extremely strong for progressing, whereas this one isn't. This is still good, like in the high-end play, in the high-end skill levels, this one's gonna get better times, but this one doesn't fall too far behind, and it's more consistent and more usable overall. I think the Valor, it's also very noteworthy that the Valor charges up very quickly. You can even get it to one-shot fill up. If you use Composed with the Valor Violent Fire, it just one-shots the entire Valor gauge full. It's so funny. And other than that, you only need 4 shells, which is way better than this piece of shit. So, despite the kinda low damage, it has very nice utility. It's not too bad in any other regard, so this one's definitely my favorite gun lance. Next up is I'm gonna go with Switch Axe. Guild Switch Axe. A or B tier? I'm gonna go with B tier because I think it's slightly worse than Adept Duels. But this weapon's so good in this game. Like, it got buffed so hard in Jin. It basically, with energy charge, the gauge doesn't become an issue anymore, and 30 affinity on it for free is so good. Demon Riot is also very strong hunter art. It doesn't do that much in terms of flat damage, but it locks your gauge, which can be really helpful, especially if you're trying to spam the discharge or something. and extra damage is extra damage, so this one is actually fairly helpful. I think it does something like 4% more damage with power files, and that is not incredible, but it's noteworthy, and I think in general this one also doesn't have bad motion values on it. It has good hunter arts, has good mobility, and if you're using an evade build, you can also just sidestep anything and continue comboing. Whereas with other weapons like longsword, you would have to reset the combo. And this just makes it very aggressive. Striker, even more so, and that's why I'm gonna put it higher. I think the having 3 hunter arts is incredibly useful because you're gonna get readiness, demon rite, and energy charge at once, and that is just so fucking good. And the main disadvantage of Switch X in this game in particular is that they nerfed the energy charge cooldown and made Demon Rite deplete faster compared to base gen, which really hurts its upkeep a lot. But even then, if you play aggressively, you can hold on to them forever, so it's not as comfy as before, but it's still very high in damage potential. Adept, I actually think is probably the worst Switch X, but it's still Switch X nonetheless, which is why it's good. But still, you give up 2 Hunter Arts compared to Striker, and the counter is decent, but like not good enough to just use Evade on Striker Switch X. I mean, you're getting 30 free affinity, so you can get Evade at 1 in your set and still have 95 to 100 crit. So it doesn't really justify it. Same with Ariel, except Ariel I think is a bit better. Maybe, yeah, I'm gonna put it in B. Maybe this one a bit higher, but this one is a B because I think this is probably the best mount in the entire game. If we're just talking about the Ariel vault, because it's fast, it does a double slash. The damage is pretty good actually, and you can spam it very quickly. So, despite the lack of hunter arts, it has something going for it. It's more niche than the other ones, but still good. About the other two, not too sure. Let's say Alchemy. Alchemy, I would put it above Guild, but not next to Striker. Purely because I think not having the upward slash is pretty detrimental. I think, despite being technically lower DPS, I think it is more consistent due to the higher reach and like having a better sharpness to hit ratio compared to the upswing, which helps if you're not running razor sharp on Switch X. There are some reasons to do it, but it's just, I don't know, I think it's worth Striker again, but having a barrel and a double slash can be good in a lot of scenarios. It's just not necessarily better. I definitely prefer the upswing combo because it has a better rhythm. The DPS loss is pretty much not noteworthy. It has a better sharpness return and you can sidestep earlier. So definitely prefer Striker, but this one is very noteworthy as well. Valor, similar deal as Ariel, except I would say it's stronger than Ariel. I think what's cool about it is you get the double discharge. So if you run something like the Crystal Beard Axe with Demon Rite and then fill it up and then just spam the discharge, that's very powerful and hilarious. You don't lose too much, really. You lose the switching outside of Valor, but it's not really a big deal because you want to stay in sword mode anyway, and if you just want to do that, you can do that. the innate iframes, they kind of help, and you have just really interesting combos with it. I think it plays very differently than the other Switch X's, but it's similarly powerful, so definitely a strong B tier. And that's why we get into, I would say, Charge Blade first. Guild Charge Blade is bad. I would say not as bad as Gunlance, but the issue is there's no reason to use it because there's Striker, and I'm gonna put Striker way higher up than that. Maybe not B, maybe. Yeah, that seems fine. Striker just gets like 5% more damage than Guild. So it does more damage just by virtue of having more damage on the moves. And you also get an extra Hunter art, which is nice if you run both Evade arts and Ripper Shield or something like that. And if you really want to, you can use something like Limit Breaker or Energy Blade if you feel like that. But it's not the reason why it's so much better, because with Guild, the thing is it has the weird shield thrust, which got really nerfed in this game, and it does way worse damage compared to the round slash. Um, and it just doesn't really get anything new. It has the weird yellow shield, which sucks and should never be used. And aside from that, you don't have anything. And Striker also gets a different guard point. You just get extra guard points, you get more damage, you get a Hunter art more, and you lose nothing. It's just better in every way. Same with Adept. It's just way the fuck better than Guild in every conceivable way. It loses nothing important, and the ability to counter block and then combo into 4 very useful moves is incredible. And despite the lower damage in X mode, I actually think Adept performs a little bit more consistently, at least in my experience. Purely because you can stay way more offensive with the X mode. Because with Striker, if you get hit, you get hit. With Adept, you can actually evade and do something with the slow and clunky X mode. And that gives it a lot of flexibility, in my opinion. So, strong C tier, I would say, but not higher because I just think Charge Blade in general, it doesn't do really incredible damage. It's kind of mid in terms of damage, and also you need to be able to use it. And the block nerf and the counter AED from 4 Ultimate, that they hurt it a lot. I would put it like here if it was 4 Ultimate Charge Blade, but it's not as good, sadly. Alchemy, I don't know, same issue as Guild. It's just worse Striker. It can't do anything that Striker can't do better, and it gains nothing. Well, except the barrel, I guess, but the barrel is also not important on a weapon that can block, so not a big deal. Area, where's Area? I think I skipped over Area. There we go. Area, I would put here. I think it's similarly strong as the other ones. This one in particular is very good for file spamming, because you can just, you don't give up too much. In base trend it kind of sucked because you needed to either not have red shield or you would super burst in midair. But in GU you can actually choose to use the super burst with red shield. So that just makes it very useful. And aside from having to vault to do the A charge, which is changed to the X vault attack, you don't really lose anything important. It's just I would say it's slightly worse than these two, but not much. And it has its niche. If you use the Acanto or Diablo's charge blade, you can spam with them and do a lot of fire damage. And that's really the main benefit. Valor, I would say, is slightly worse. It definitely has a lot of the same benefits of the other ones, and especially in the file spam department, it's very good, but charging Valor is inconvenient on this weapon. There are some monsters that really aren't forgiving with letting you charge up, and outside of it, you kind of give up a lot. And while you're in it, you get a nerfed, I think a nerfed Ultra. You can spam it, but it's slightly nerfed, I think. And the A combo is better anyway. But I think the main issue is really that I think the moveset isn't good enough to really justify giving up the things it gives up compared to the other styles I put higher. So I can't put it much higher in good faith, even though it's fun to use. I will admit that. Insect Glaive is very good. I like it. I think it's about as good as Guild. Longsword, maybe here. I think Guild Insect Glaive is very strong. It's just not much contending. It's the most consistent style, but I would also not put it here because I don't think it's as good. It doesn't have the same utility. But it's very strong either way. Um, it's just a very mid weapon with decent damage potential. It's agile. It has very consistent damage upkeep and some utility. But yeah, I would say the same about Valor. It's pretty much the same thing except you have like I think you give up the vault, which you shouldn't spam anyway, for the ability to send out your kid sect in Valor mode. It's not a terrible trade-off. You lose almost nothing and you get a marginal benefit for it. So kind of nice, but not anything groundbreaking. The Lost Hunter art kinda hurts it because Extract Hunter and Readiness are pretty useful, considering all the good glaives use Readiness. And yeah, I think Adept is in the same ballpark. Its main issue is that it's matchup dependent. A lot of people shit on it for being difficult to use and inconsistent, but I don't think that's the case, honestly. I think these people just suck at using it. Because, I mean, imagine that you have a monster, you look at it, you just send out the Kinsec at the head, get red, and when it draws, you counter, and then you attack the leg and get white. And with a speed Kinsec, you just keep up both of these by countering every now and then. And you pretty much never run out of Kinsect with this, unless you accidentally get a triple boost. In which case, it's not too difficult to refill. And I think having a counter is very useful on it. So you don't give up too much for making it, except for like making it more difficult to use overall. And same as Valor, it's just some benefits that don't matter too much, some detriments that are easy to work around, and yeah, like I know somebody will say it's too difficult and very cumbersome, but I don't think so. It's not Valorant. It's not, you don't have to fumble around half an hour with a fucking bad Valor attack until it gets good. This one just gets good the moment you get red, and that's very easy to obtain. Striker, you know what, this is gonna be controversial. A lot of people attribute this to say this is like the worst style in the game, but it's not. I think it's a similar thing as Adept. A lot of people just undervalue it because most people just spam the infinite in guild and use extract hunter, but this one actually has a different niche. Specifically if you use the Elder Frost Gambado and use Bug Blow and Swarm with it, because the Bug Blow with Swarm boost has like a 300 something motion value altogether. Like, it's so dumb. It does so much damage, and I did some comparisons between motion values, and the not having the infinite doesn't hurt it too much. The main issue is that it moves you around not using the infinite, and considering most monsters in this game don't give you openings that are that much longer than you would use for the full combo anyway, it's not a big deal, honestly. Like, most of the time you're only gonna do the first 3 or 4 hits and then you just back out and start over or do something else with it. And even if you have a longer opening, you can just like do the combo and then combo into Bug Blow, and that does way more damage than normal hits anyway, so it's a decent thing to consider. It's a decent style to consider. It's just you need the right setup for it, and you can't use it on anything like guild and get good results. You need to use it on something where you can actually benefit from the Bug Blow. I think the main reason nobody uses this in speedruns is because the Swarm and Bug Blow combo, it does have some long animations, so this loses some time and time attack, but this doesn't matter on casual hunts. Like, the moment the monster does aggro you and go somewhere else, or it changes the area, or you just get a good opening while you can't really capitalize on hitting good spots, you can just use it there. It's not too big of a deal. Alchemy I actually think is worse. You can do the same as with Striker, but I think the combo is worse. I don't like it as much. Somebody could probably make it more useful. I've actually seen speedruns with this thing, so it might be better if I figure out how to use the combo properly, maybe, but so far I haven't, and that's why I think it's worse. Area, yeah, I would put it above Adept. I think the new Vault is really useful for getting around. Like, if you have something like a Hellblade Gladness that just spams its fucking Flame Breath and does sidesteps and backhops all the time, you can chase it very well with this. And you just lose nothing important. So it's basically just guild, except you trade a Hunter Art for a longer Vault. So that's pretty cool. And now we're getting into the range weapons. I think I'm gonna start with Light Bowgun because it's the least controversial of them. Adept goes straight to high B tier. I think it's very strong. The only detriment is that the damage potential isn't as high. Like, you're doing mid-tier damage, but you have extremely high utility. It's very easy to keep your damage high in group hunts. Like, the damage upkeep is just very, very consistent, even on lower skill levels. The counter is very useful. If you know how to set it up, you can counter things all the time. Get the adept reload and do more damage by countering. And that is pretty much the main reason it's mostly used in speedruns over other styles. But very useful, very consistent. You get tons of options for status and other useful ammos with this weapon. So it's way more versatile than any Blade Master weapon, and easily one of my favorite weapons in the entire game. And Adept happens to be the most happens to have the most damage potential. Striker is... Where's Striker? There you go. Striker is in a similar boat. I think it trades the Adept counter reload, which is some damage boost for Hunter Art. You would use this if you use Full House and both evade arts to cycle through ammo. It's also a bit safer because the evade arts, like, it has a very forgiving input, and the duration holds longer than the adept iframes. So on monsters like, say, Crimson Fatalis or Elatrion, where you're not always sure the timing of the attacks, like if you get hit by a big AoE, say Elatrion's Thunder Dive or the Flame Breath of the Fatalis, then you might mess up the timing with Adept, but you won't with Striker because you can just use the evasion, and also you can use items afterwards. So it has its niche at the cost of a little bit less damage, and I would put Guild in pretty much a similar boat. It's slightly worse due to having one less Hunter Arts, but you get the sidestep. So if you want them, they are nice. If you don't want them, just use Striker. And if you just want damage and just focus on one main ammo, then Adept is the way to go. Aerial, I think, is a fair bit worse. It doesn't. I think not having a regular dodge hurts it because you're gonna get caught more often. And even if you do the counter, it's not very precise. So it's just a worse adept that gives up the benefits of Guild and Striker and just isn't very good. I've heard somebody, I think my LBG has pointed out that it's faster than the adept counter to pull off the vault. So might be beneficial, maybe on some monsters like Zinogre, where you can jump on it and still reach the good hit zones, but I personally don't think it's very useful overall. Just all the styles are better. All the other ones are better than this. Alchemy 2, I would actually put this a bit lower because I don't know. I don't see a reason to bring a barrel for something that these two can just do anyway. And Valor is same reason as with Aerial. I just don't see a reason to use it. It doesn't have the adept counter, so it's not as good. It does have the Valor dodge, but you don't really need it. You're gonna have evade arts up with these two, or have the adept counter anyway with adept. And something noteworthy is that it actually gets recoil down if you use the power reload. So it can help with some things, but I don't think it's that great of an asset, honestly. Like, you could just use a different style with Silencer if you really have to lower your recoil one tier, and it's just not worth it in my opinion. The other noteworthy thing about it has these Valor specific ammos. Like if you Valor reload and get into Valor. Oh yeah, the reload itself is also always a fixed animation, so long reloads can be shortened by this, but the main thing you would want to use this for is for the Valor ammo, which you get after a shot and then sidestepping. But the damage sucks. It's like normal 3 bad, except you also need to sidestep and can't aim it properly. Like, it takes a lot of practice to hit anything at all with it, and even if you're really good with it, it's very inconsistent. And even then, the damage just kinda sucks. You can KO with it, which is pretty cool, but I don't think it's very good to use these ammos, so it's just worse adept because you're just gonna be using it to fire normal ammo, but you don't have the adept counter. It's a bit... I like it more than aerial because you still have regular dodges, and in Velo you actually get evade boosts, so that's useful, but I don't think it's good enough to justify giving up more Hunter Arts or the adept counter. And yeah, that's it for light bowgun. Heavy bowgun. Ooh, I like this one. Very good. Guild is very strong. Maybe not as good as Light Bowgun overall, maybe not as versatile, but sieging does a lot for it. It just does a lot of damage, and that's the reason why I put it so high. I don't think it has any other qualities, really, because Guild is just very vanilla. You just put both evade arts on it and you use it to get around, and then you just siege when you need to. It's worse adept. I would put adept higher because adept just has the adept dodge. It's not it's not defenseless when you're getting attacked in crouch fire, and you can just use the adept counter to get into crouch fire again and reposition quickly. Like, say a monster charges at you, you dodge through it and you turn around and siege immediately at crit distance. That's something that Guild can't do, and that's why it's way worse. But both are fairly respectable styles. I think Striker. I'm not sure if it's D tier. I think it's like worse Light Bowgun because it can do all the things Light Bowgun can, except it's clunkier, slower, doesn't have full house, doesn't have rapid fire, does slightly more damage in some scenarios, but I don't know. Just fires single bullets and has higher damage than some Light Bowguns, but at none of the advantages of them. So I'm gonna put it in D along with Alchemy because it's essentially the same thing. There's no really meaningful difference in my opinion. I'm not really sure like if one or two, both of these get recoil inherently or something, but even then I don't think it's that great to have them. And Ariel is weird. I think it's, yeah, I would say it's better than Guild slightly. It's basically Guild, but except for Hunter Art, you get the Aerial Vault, and I actually think this one is very good. The reason is because you can rapid fire siege ammo from Aerial, and I'm not sure if it forces crit distance, but whether or not it does, the main benefit is you can vault over monsters and then siege at crit distance behind them. The thing about it is the vault always launches you like 2.5 rolls away, which is in crit distance for normal 2, 3, Pierce 1 to 3, and Pellet 2 and 3. So most of the main ammos you're gonna use with this will be at crit distance after the vault, and you can siege out of it immediately, and you get the power reload thing in midair. So this is actually really good. I've seen people call this a meme and really bad and like it's trashy, but it's only a meme if you like spam the vault and do nothing else. It's actually really good for getting around, and not having Hunter Arts isn't too bad because the Hunter Arts aren't amazing anyway. Some noteworthy Hunter Arts are like Guns Blazing because it sets the recoil to 0 so he can shoot status, which is pretty cool. Or if you want to use it, Gunpowder Infusion. I personally use Mass Combiner just to preserve ammo, but it already knows to get around, but just having one on heavy bowgun's not a deal breaker. I think it's worse than Adept, but it's pretty good, very underrated style. And now we're getting to okay, hold on. This one needs to be its own style, its own tier. I don't fucking know what they thought when they made this. This is by far, by a huge margin, the best weapon I've ever used in all of the years I've played Monster Hunter. This is so dumb and so overpowered that I really think they should not have released the game in this state. This is like so. I don't know how this went past the playtesting. This is just so broken in every regard. I don't think anyone will debate that this is the best weapon in the entire game and potentially in the entire series. It is just so dummy OP. This thing literally doesn't have any weaknesses whatsoever. The only supposed offset of this is you trade Hunter Arts, which, well, doesn't matter. Even if you used Gunpowder Infusion, it wouldn't be worth it because the animation to use it wouldn't be worth the damage trading you could be spending sieging. And you don't need any of the other ones. So this one is for Mass Combiner and for good reason, because somehow they decided to boost the siege firing rate, and they didn't just boost it like give it a 10% or 20% faster firing rate. No, it's like, I think I saw a comparison to Adept. I think it's like 70% faster. Like you do like almost double the damage of a top tier weapon already. And not just that, like this is just the pure damage that it can do when it's uninterrupted. It's not just that it does like way more damage. No, this thing just like the supposed trade-off is that it has to go into Valor, but like you only need like 6 slice shots and you're in Valor, and the thing does so much dummy OP damage that you just stay in Valor the entire hunt. Legit, if you're almost running out of it, you can just power reload and you fill it up while you're in Valor with your regular ammo. And not just that, like the thing is just so ridiculous. Like the Valor evade itself is very useful for it. You can keep your weapon drawn after it. You can use it to reposition. You get iframes from Valor on it, which you can use to dodge out of siege, out of crouch fire. You can use it to dodge regular attacks. You can use it to move around and like just dodge through things and set up a siege. And the way you're setting up a siege is so ridiculous as well. You can just use the power run to get around. You're literally moving at the speed of a running animation with a weapon sheathed. You can slide and set up a siege in every direction. And this just leads to gameplay where you just in Valor all the time. You set up sieges where other styles cannot set them up, and you do way more damage than anything else in this game. It's literally the perfect weapon. This thing has no weaknesses whatsoever. It's the best weapon in terms of damage. It's the best in speedruns. It's the best in solo. It's the best in multiplayer. It's just there's no reason to not use this ever if you're looking for pure efficiency. It just beats all other weapons in every regard. It's so dumb. Like I have no idea how they released this. And yeah, I don't fucking know. This is just so dumb. And I love it to death. Uh yeah, I have nothing more to add. It's like the most broken style ever. And so we're moving on to bow. I think bow, what are we gonna do with it? What are we gonna do with it? I think Guild Bow. Probably B tier. I think it's very strong. The power shot does a lot. And power shots in this game especially are very strong, since True Shot Up boosts them very high. You get the back hop instant charge with this, which is a really nice alternative to Adept. It's not better than Adept, but it's very nice. I think it's a bit weird to use, but if you get used to it, it's very strong. Maybe Adept Heavy Bowgun strong, but the main reason I'm gonna put it B is because I think Adept deserves the A more. I think because it just can do anything Guild can do, except it has an added dodge. and which charges up instantly, so it wastes a bit less time. Can be more aggressive, and you can also instantly activate the power shot if you want, which is pretty cool. So that is very useful. Guild, in comparison, just uses the arc shot instead. So, and arc shots aren't good in this game, so Adept just has a slight edge over it. And very powerful style. Maybe not as broken as these, but very powerful. Striker is fucking terrible. It's take everything about bow that's good. Like take Adept bow. Like what's good about it? It's agile. It can charge fast. It has a power shot which gets boosted. Like it levels up your shot. It does more damage, and you can boost it with true shot. And you can follow, and it indirectly increases your damage by not having to charge extra on top of the regular charge you're doing. So take all of these advantages and throw them in the trash. This thing, you play this like old school bow, except with the motion values of new school bow, and so you're gonna be doing no damage with this. The hunter arts, except for haste rain, are all terrible, so none of it is worth using. You're getting nothing in return for just essentially giving up the thing that makes bow good. And even on its own, I think it took me like 10 minutes to beat a high rank Hermitor with it. So, while testing, and that is like worse than what I could do with Valor Gunlands, so way worse. So, that is fucking terrible. I think that might even be outdamaged by aerial Gunlands. Same with Alchemy. It gets nothing for trading everything, and it just fucking sucks. Aerial bow. This is a tragedy. If this thing charged to level 3 instead of level 2, I would put it here. But it has like it has like 2/3 of the damage it could have. And that is such a huge deal breaker that I have to put it low. It is very strange that they didn't just let you charge to level 3 with it, because that would have gone such a long way to make it good. But the way it is, it's too bad. And Vela, oh boy, this one is, not sure if I put it here or here, but it doesn't matter. I just put this here for the meme so I can put Vela Heavy Bowgun even higher. So let's just leave it here. Vela Bow is dummy OP. It doesn't look like much at first if you use it. Like it looks like you get a power shot for like trading the adept dodge and the charge, and you have to set it up awkwardly with the Valor arc shot, which is all true. That's like a problem, but the third power shot is just really what makes it shine. Not only does it benefit from true shot up, which makes the ratio at which it is active better compared to the other ones, but you can also fire it immediately after another one, which means you have to charge even less in between shots. And also, somebody decided to give it like a 30% damage boost on top of all the damage it also already does extra compared to other styles. So this thing is just dummy OP in terms of pure damage. Like, I think in terms of pure DPS, like, nothing beats it except Valor Heavy Bowgun. Depending on the matchup, it can be more cumbersome than these two to use, but I think the pure damage output, the fact that it's overall pretty pretty good to use, makes it an immediate S tier for me. Like, this is straight up one of the most busted weapons in the entire game. And if it wasn't for Valor Heavy Bowgun, it would probably be the best weapon in the entire game. And now we're getting to Cat. And these are probably gonna be a bit controversial because I'm not gonna be putting them here. That would be very easy to do. if you look at the speedrun times, but I actually think they have some redeeming factors, redeeming qualities. I think what's best about them is that they're mostly easy to use. They don't require items. They are very comprehensive in terms of how they are used, and the damage upkeep is just very good. The reason it sucks in speedruns is because usually the gap between a mediocre player, like a casual player, and a speedrunner. The reason I wouldn't say Valor Longsword, for example, is good on casual players is because they're just going to be fumbling around outside of Valor too much. They're not going to be capitalized on every counter as much as a speedrunner. Whereas a speedrunner will just like walk up to the monster, like be in Valor very quickly and keep it up the entire hunt and just nail every counter and just hit the monster at the right spots all the time. A casual player will not be getting that. But for cats, on the other hand, like the way a pro player plays compared to a casual player, it's not gonna be too different. They're just gonna be throwing boomerangs all the time. The pro player will be better, but there's not as much potential to get out of it compared to some other weapons like Valor Longsword. This means, though, if we were to stack it up against other weapons in terms of general usage, they actually tend to be way higher than they are in speedrunning. In speedrunning, their damage potential gets exhausted way too early, and they just fall off too hard to justify ever using them. But in casual hunts, you actually contribute well. Like, I've seen somebody say, if you're using cat, you're gonna get carried no matter what, which is ludicrous, because personally, I don't get worse hunt times online compared to using anything in D tier most of the time. And in fact, this is actually my go-to for some EX hunts because you can just like cheese with a bat, so you can just not die. And if you die, you don't die, and just teleport to camp, heal up, and you don't die again. And in fact, I've gotten many players to actually use this in online hubs. And even with inexperienced players, I managed to get them through Bolt Reaver or Grimclaw or Hellblade EX in less than 15 minutes. It's not a great time, but consider like none of these players were experienced, and this is pretty much the safe bet. And even though you can't just mow them down in 5 minutes like with Bowgun, you're gonna be you're gonna be very safe with these and very consistent. Like I would say I could clear, say, Bolt Reaver AX every time I pick Cat and never fail. Whereas with Bowgun, I'm pretty sure I would be getting triple cards every now and then. And that's really the main reason you're gonna be using these. They are very safe, very consistent. They have a high utility. They have a very low cost to use or upkeep cost of anything. They're never gonna run out of ammo. They're never gonna run out of lives, and they're never gonna stop keeping up their damage. And that's why I would put at least the collect prowler, the gathering prowler in D tier. I think the other ones are slightly worse. Like I think these two, they lose the third boomerang, which does the most damage, for an added block and an added dodge. I think if we used purely bomb, they would be somewhere here. I actually use that. It's fun against some monsters like Gravius or Fatalis. This is actually somewhat usable, but the effective way to use them is to spam boomerangs, and they're just worse than gathering in that regard. I think the healing actually a fair bit better because they get the triple boomerang. They lose out on some damage because they don't have the best stats, but they have a very high gauge gain, similarly to collect, and you get some heal moves on top. Like you can use the True Health Horn, and it also gets boosted by the inherent heal boost. And I think it's fun to use it with Pro Hatter and just run around using the healing vase. Assist is pretty much the same, except it trades some damage for more durability and trades the plunder rank for traps. So this one is the way to go for spamming traps, which is pretty useful online, and even solo this can be useful. So it's actually pretty good. Fighting Cat, they are poo poo bad. They're not completely terrible, but they don't really have the boomerang potential. Their gauge gain is pretty bad with it, and their damage is pretty low. I think they have technically better stats than healing for boomerang, but they're not gonna be throwing the triple boomerang, so and have less gauge, so that's worse. You can spam mounts with them though, and that's pretty much the only reason to use them, similar to Charisma. Charisma is just the worst one. Fighter is, I think, better because it had better stats. It can keep up the area. It has more aerial uptime because you need to be inferiors, and then that's it. You have area, whereas Charisma just needs to spam the horn the entire time. Uh, and yeah, I don't know. These are pretty bad. You can mount spam with this, but why would you? There are better weapons for it. Beast, I would put it here. It's not completely terrible, it just does too little damage, in my opinion. I think it's pretty cool that you have like the capability to buff other people with Rocksteady and Affinity. I think it's pretty cool that the combos are very versatile. I think the backhop iframe thing is very good, and you don't need any other moves other than be in beast mode. So you can use weapon upgrade or claw dance to do more damage. But no matter how you look at it, the damage output isn't amazing. And that's the only reason I can't put it higher. Maybe I put it here. It's decent. It's pretty much the best way to melee with cats, but I think any boomerang cat will be better overall, and that's pretty much the end of it. I think I'm fairly satisfied with these overall. It's maybe I'll reconsider one or two choices. I'm not entirely sure about like these, for example, but I think I'm satisfied with this. Maybe I'm a bit too harsh on one or two of them, but this is mostly from personal experience and not reflective of the speedrun quality of these. I would say they're somewhat reflective of how well they do, even if somebody else picked them up. So consider this more of a recommendation than like a metric to measure up how good weapons are in a factual scale or something. I don't think that represents really what I categorize them by. Like, say hunting horn, I put it way higher because I put it way higher than some other weapons because I think the buff capability is very useful, and that's really the main reason. Um, yeah, that is my tier list. I think it's not too controversial unless you're like one of these people that thinks, oh yeah, like the speedrunning is all there is to it. Like, this is everything that matters, and everything else is just like subjective, bro. Like, I want to see that subjectivity be tested if you use Valor Greatsword against Striker Bow, and tell me the results, even if you're not. Even if you somehow have a really great preference towards this one, you will perform better with this one, no matter what. But so there's some kind of truth to it, I think. But even then, I would say it's like from here to here, it's mostly up for preference. Like these are unquestionably some of the best, and these probably some of the worst. But like more or less, the middle is debatable. And that's really the summary of it. I think that's, I think this is not the authority on how good certain things are. I just think it's, look at it as a recommendation. I think if you pick up one of these, you're gonna be happy. If you pick up one of these, you're gonna be noticing that something is wrong or that you're gonna be lacking, and you're gonna be falling a bit behind in terms of hunt times, in terms of clear efficiency, or in terms of getting your breaks or whatever you want to do with these. And yeah, I think I'm satisfied with this. I think the explanations on these weapons do them more justice than actually putting them here. It's a very reductive way, but it was a fun exercise to look at the weapons I wanted to use. And yeah, that's pretty much it.